A Friday night in Midtown, every single table in the dining room is occupied. The reservation list for the rest of the evening is completely full. The kitchen line is humming with precision, tickets flowing out of the printer every few seconds. Outside, valets are parking cars along the curb. By every visible metric known to human perception, you are looking at a business operating at the absolute pinnacle of its game. And yet, at the end of this month, after paying the landlord, the food distributors, the utility companies, the insurance carriers, and the state tax authorities, the owner of this exact restaurant might walk away with less money than the shift manager working the front house. In fact, they might lose money. That is not a worst-case scenario invented to terrify prospective entrepreneurs. It is the baseline daily reality for hundreds of thousands of restaurant operators across the United States. The public sees a bustling social hub, a neighborhood landmark, or a culinary passion project. Wall Street sees something far more terrifying: a hyper-volatile, perishable inventory manufacturing facility, a high-volume retail counter, and an intensive staffing agency, all squeezed into a single leased physical structure, operating on gross margins so thin that a single broken walk-in freezer can wipe out an entire quarter's net profit. If you run a traditional retail shop selling shoes, your inventory sits on a shelf. If a pair of sneakers doesn't sell on Tuesday, it sits quietly in a box until Thursday, retaining virtually all of its intrinsic value. But if you run a restaurant, your inventory is rotting by the minute. Raw halibut, prime ribeyes, fresh dairy, and organic microgreens have a strict financial lifespan measured in hours. If they don't move across the pass before spoilage sets in, their economic value drops directly to zero. Consider the baseline math that seasoned operators live by. A restaurant that successfully pulls in $1 million in gross top-line revenue over 12 months will, under healthy operating conditions, hand its owner somewhere between $50,000 and $70,000 in actual net cash flow. That is a net margin of 5 to 7%. Push that same business into a minor economic headwind, a spike in wholesale poultry prices, a local minimum wage increase, or a wet spring that ruins patio dining, and that small sliver of profit evaporates entirely. You are left operating a high-stress, 80-hour-a-week non-profit that you personally guaranteed with your own home equity. So, before you sign a 10-year commercial lease, pledge your life savings to buy stainless steel ranges, or hire a celebrity chef, you need to dissect the actual machinery of this industry. We need to look at how money actually moves through a restaurant, where it silently leaks, and why the math behind feeding people is one of the most brutal economic puzzles in the modern economy. The financial fate of a restaurant is largely sealed before the first hammer strikes a nail during build-out. It starts with a fundamental structural choice. What kind of economic machine are you actually building? In the hospitality universe, concepts are not merely aesthetic choices. They are rigid financial categories, with entirely different cost structures and margin profiles. At one end of the spectrum sits quick service and fast casual concepts built entirely around high transaction volume, standardized prep routines, counter or digital ordering, and low labor hours per guest. A well-operated burger joint or fast casual burrito bar aims for high-ticket turnover. Because labor requirements are minimized and throughput is optimized, these concepts can often land net profit margins between 6 and 9%. In the restaurant business, 6 to 9% is considered a luxurious, comfortable cushion. At the opposite end lies casual dining and fine dining. Here, the business model shifts radically. You are no longer just selling food. You are selling space, atmosphere, extended service, and culinary labor. You need sommeliers, bussers, line cooks, pastry chefs, and front-of-house managers. Your square footage per seat increases dramatically to give guests privacy. Your ingredient costs skyrocket because fine dining demands pristine cuts of protein and specialized sourcing. Consequently, net margins in full-service dining get squeezed down into the brutal territory of 3 to 5%. Fine dining can occasionally push its margins toward 10%, but only if the average check size is high enough to completely bury the massive labor overhead beneath it. Then comes the fork in the road every founder faces: franchise or independent. When you buy into a established franchise system, you are paying a massive premium for a tested operational playbook. You gain instant brand recognition, pre-negotiated supply chain pricing with national food distributors, and ironclad operating manuals. But that structural safety comes at a staggering upfront cost. Initial franchise fees alone can range from $10,000 for a modest regional delivery concept to over $90,000 for a Tier 1 global brand. And that is before you spend a single dime on land, steel, or concrete. Furthermore, you will pay ongoing royalties, typically 4 to 6% of gross top-line revenue plus mandatory marketing fund contributions, whether your individual location is turning a profit or bleeding cash. If you go independent, you preserve your financial autonomy. You keep every single dollar of gross margin. If wholesale beef prices skyrocket overnight, you can rewrite your menu by lunch. If you want to pivot from French bistro to Italian trattoria, nobody at a corporate headquarters can stop you, but you also inherit 100% of the systemic risk. You have no national marketing umbrella, no corporate supply chain leverage, and no safety net when foot traffic dries up. This brings us to the trap that quietly slaughters first-time independent restaurant owners: the concept mismatch. Amateur operators frequently design a concept in a vacuum. They envision an intimate, upscale wine bar featuring $40 small plates and imported charcuterie, and they drop it into a neighborhood populated primarily by college students, young families, or hourly workers looking for a $9 lunch. The restaurant does not fail because the food is cooked poorly or because the service is bad. It fails because the financial architecture of the concept never matched the economic reality of the street it sits on. Foot traffic alone is one of the most misleading metrics in commercial real estate. A sidewalk can see 20,000 people walk past a storefront every single day, but if those 20,000 people are commuters rushing to catch an express train or students looking for cheap coffee, that foot traffic is economically worthless to a white tablecloth dinner house. High density does not equal high spending power, nor does it indicate dining intent. Experienced operators spend months analyzing microdemographics, median household incomes, daytime work accounts, and surrounding competitive density before signing a lease. Because once that commercial lease is signed, your fixed occupancy costs are locked in for a decade, whether the neighborhood actually wants your menu or not. Assuming your concept perfectly matches the street, you now face the absolute hurdle of restaurant ownership: capital expenditure or CapEx. The sheer cost of turning a barren concrete box into an operational, health-inspected food service facility is staggering. To open a standard independent full-service restaurant in the United States today, total build-out costs range anywhere from $95,000 for a tiny, bare-bones quick-service leasehold to well over $2 million for a polished 3,000-square-foot dining establishment. If you purchase the commercial real estate outright, national averages hover around $178 per square foot for the land and structure. If you lease, which the vast majority of independent operators are forced to do, commercial rental rates average around $159 per square foot annually in prime metropolitan corridors. Leasing sounds like the cheaper path to entry, until you realize that you are taking on a long-term, unyielding liability that must be serviced every 30 days regardless of sales volume. When you break the construction budget into its individual components, the capital drain becomes vividly clear. General contracting and structural renovation can easily run from $100 per square foot for a light cosmetic update of an existing restaurant space to over $800 per square foot for a ground-up build, requiring specialized plumbing, concrete trenching for grease traps, and massive structural HVAC upgrades. Then comes the commercial kitchen equipment. The heavy steel line, the convection ovens, the flat-top grills, the deep fryers, the walk-in refrigeration units, and the massive stainless steel exhaust hood systems with integrated fire suppression will reliably consume between $50,000 and $150,000. And that assumes you are aggressively sourcing refurbished or second-hand equipment. If you insist on buying brand new top-tier European kitchen lines, that figure can easily double. Furniture, fixtures, and interior decor. The tables, custom chairs, architectural lighting, acoustics, and bar finishes will eat another $10,000 to $50,000 for a casual concept, and far more for an upscale environment. Technology infrastructure, your point of sale, hardware, kitchen display screens, receipt printers, contactless card terminals, and back-office management software adds another $5,000 to $25,000 up front before factoring in ongoing monthly SaaS subscription fees. And we haven't even mentioned pre-opening operational expenses. Before a single paying guest steps across your threshold, you must purchase your initial opening inventory of dry goods, fresh proteins, and paper supplies. You must pay 2 to 3 weeks of non-productive wages to train your front and back of house staff. You must finance your soft opening marketing push, pay architectural filing fees, acquire municipal health permits, and post utility deposits. This pre-opening black hole quietly devours between $20,000 and $120,000 in liquid cash. Then, there is the silent financial landmine that catches out-of-state investors completely unprepared: the liquor license. In certain jurisdictions, acquiring a license to sell beer, wine, and spirits is a straightforward administrative process. You file an application with the state government, pay a fee of a few hundred to a few $1,000s, undergo a background check, and receive your permit in a matter of weeks. But in quota states California, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Michigan being prime examples, the state caps the total number of full liquor licenses based strictly on municipal population counts. If you want to open a full-service restaurant with a liquor program in a city like Los Angeles, San Francisco, or Philadelphia where the quota is completely maxed out, you cannot buy a license from the government. You have to buy it on the open secondary market from an existing holder, a closing restaurant, a bar operator, or a private speculator. In major California metro areas, the market price for a Type 47 full liquor license frequently exceeds $400,000 cash up front. That is $400,000 of tied-up capital spent before you have poured a single ounce of bourbon or sold a single cocktail. Once your doors are finally open and the initial excitement subsides, you run straight into the operator's most persistent, relentless daily enemy: payroll. Most first-time restaurant owners construct their initial financial pro forma by calculating raw hourly wages. They multiply $20 an hour by 40 hours a week, add up the headcount, and assume they have accurately budgeted their labor expenses. They are dead wrong. Raw hourly wages represent only the base layer of actual employment costs. Once you layer on the mandatory employer-side payroll taxes, FICA, Medicare, federal and state unemployment insurance, alongside workers' compensation insurance, mandatory paid sick leave, healthcare contributions, and shift meals, the true fully loaded cost of an employee runs 10 to 40% higher than their base hourly wage alone. A healthy, sustainably managed restaurant aims to keep its total fully loaded labor expense under 30% of total gross revenue. If your labor cost creeps past 35%, the entire financial architecture of the business begins to structurally buckle. Yet, underneath that baseline percentage lies a far more destructive financial disease: turnover. The hospitality industry suffers from the highest employee turnover rates of any sector in the global economy. In quick-service restaurants, annual turnover routinely surges past 130%. That means the average position on your staff chart gets completely refilled more than once every 12 months. Casual dining operates at 75 to 100% annual turnover. Even fine dining, the most stable, professionalized tier of the industry, struggles with 60 to 75% turnover. A landmark study conducted by the School of Hotel Administration at Cornell University quantified the precise hidden cost of losing a single hourly restaurant employee. When you aggregate direct recruiting costs, background checks, managerial time spent interviewing, formal training hours, lost line productivity, and the inevitable order mistakes made by an inexperienced new hire finding their footing on a busy night. Replacing one worker costs an average of $5,864. Now apply that math to a mid-sized casual restaurant, employing 50 workers. At an industry average turnover rate of 100%, that business is replacing 50 employees every single year. Multiply 50 by the Cornell metric of $5,864, and you discover an invisible, unbudgeted cash bleed of nearly $293,000 annually. Nobody prints that figure on a leather-bound menu. It never shows up as a line item on an invoice from a supplier. It silently drains through the back door, day after day, through burnt food, slow ticket times, missed upsells, and shattered glassware. To control this chaos, professional operators rely on a single golden metric: prime cost. Prime cost is the combined sum of your total cost of goods, sold your food and beverage ingredient costs, and your total fully loaded labor cost. In a financially viable restaurant, prime cost must remain strictly below 65% of total gross revenue. If you are leasing a premium location with high rent, that threshold drops to 60%. The moment your prime cost crosses 65%, you enter the operational dead zone. There simply will not be enough gross profit left over to pay your fixed overhead rent, insurance, utilities, marketing, debt service, and equipment maintenance. Controlling the food component of prime cost, which should ideally sit between 28 and 35% of food sales, requires navigating an operational reality that most novice cooks completely misunderstand. Raw weight is not usable weight. When a kitchen purchases a 20-pound bulk box of fresh whole carrots, it does not get 20 pounds of sellable ingredient. Peeling, trimming, and removing tops instantly destroys 10 to 30% of the product's raw mass. When a butcher trims a whole subprimal beef tenderloin, cutting away the chain, silver skin, and excess fat, weight loss can easily hit 25% before a single steak touches the grill. Cooked shrinkage during searing and roasting strips away another 15 to 20% of moisture weight. If your kitchen staff fails to accurately calculate true yield pricing down to the exact gram, your theoretical menu pricing will be wildly wrong, and your actual food cost will blow past your budget. This problem is compounded exponentially by highly perishable luxury ingredients. Fresh seafood, berries, avocados, and specialized produce carry massive waste potential. If a fresh halibut fillet spoils in the walk-in cooler before it is ordered, the real food cost of the remaining fillets on that delivery sheet explodes instantly. This brings us to one of the most counterintuitive financial principles in hospitality management, the steak versus pasta paradox, or the illusion of food cost percentages. Imagine a traditional menu featuring two popular entrees, a prime New York strip steak priced at $35 and a truffle mushroom tagliatelle pasta priced at $18.95. The raw ingredients for the steak, the butchered beef, butter, herbs, and side cost the kitchen $10.50. That represents a 30% food cost. On paper, to an inexperienced manager focused solely on percentages, a 30% food cost looks somewhat high and inefficient. Now look at the pasta. The raw ingredients, flour, egg, mushrooms, cream, and oil cost the kitchen just under $4. That represents a sleek 20% food cost. The percentage-focused manager rejoices, believing the pasta is a wildly superior financial engine for the restaurant. Now let's translate those percentages into actual, bankable dollars, what operators call contribution margin. When a guest orders the $18.95 pasta, the restaurant spends $4 on ingredients, leaving $14.95 in cash margin to contribute toward paying rent, electric bills, and staff wages. When a guest orders the $35 steak, the restaurant spends $10.50 on ingredients, leaving $24.50 in cash margin sitting on the pass. The steak, despite looking dramatically less efficient on a spreadsheet percentage column, delivers nearly $10 more in hard cash to the bank account every single time it leaves the kitchen. You cannot deposit percentages into a bank account. you can only deposit dollars. This is why master restaurant operators utilize strategic menu engineering. Every item on a menu is continuously audited and mapped into one of 4 distinct categories based on its profitability and sales volume. First, the stars dishes with both high popularity and high cash profit margins, like that high-yield steak or a signature craft cocktail. These are protected at all costs. They drive the business. Second, the plow horses dishes with high popularity but low profit margins, like a cheap baseline burger or a loss leader chicken wing special. Operators work quietly behind the scenes to re-engineer these plates, slashing portion sizes by a fraction of an ounce, switching to a lower-cost produce supplier, or subtly adjusting the menu price up by 50 cents. Third, the puzzles dishes that yield extremely high cash profit margins but suffer from low ordering volume, such as a specialized duck confit or a premium seafood stew. Operators use menu psychology to save them, placing them inside visual call-out boxes on the menu, training servers to actively suggest them, or moving them into the prime visual real estate of the menu page, the top right-hand quadrant where the human eye naturally lands first. Fourth, the dogs dishes with low popularity and low profit margins. They are instantly executed. They waste prep time, clog up line stations, cause inventory spoilage, and contribute nothing to the bottom line. Menu engineering extends deep into behavioral economics. Remove the dollar signs from your menu prices, printing $18 instead of $18, and peer-reviewed studies from Cornell University prove that guests spend roughly 8% more per order. The physical visual symbol of the dollar sign acts as an immediate psychological friction point, reminding the brain of financial loss. Place one outrageously expensive item, a $95 dry-aged porterhouse, at the very top of a menu section, and suddenly every $34 entree underneath it feels completely reasonable and accessible by comparison. Even if your kitchen executes perfect yield calculations and your menu engineering is flawless, you still have to face the wall of fixed operating expenses, the costs that accumulate 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, whether you serve 500 guests or sit completely empty. Occupancy costs comprising base rent, property taxes, building insurance, and common area maintenance fees should ideally stay between 6 and 10% of total revenue. Utilities devour another 3 to 5%. A commercial restaurant utility bill is astronomical compared to any standard retail business. Walk-in coolers, line refrigeration, ice machines, exhaust fans, and dishwashers run continuously. A medium-sized commercial kitchen can easily rack up $3,000 to $5,000 a month, just keeping the electricity and gas lines active. Marketing, public relations, and local promotional pushes require another 3 to 6% of revenue to maintain customer acquisition momentum. And then comes an expense that has quietly inflated into one of the largest single line item operational drains in the entire modern food service ecosystem: credit card processing fees. In an increasingly cashless society, over 90% of all dining transactions are processed via credit, debit, or mobile payment platforms. When a restaurant owner sets up their point-of-sale ecosystem, they are typically offered an all-in-one bundled merchant processing agreement for convenience. These bundled processors generally charge a flat-rate fee structure, typically around 2.5% to 3%, plus 15 cents per physical card transaction, rising to 3.5% for online or delivery orders. Consider what that means for a restaurant doing $60,000 a month in card processing volume under a flat-rate setup. That operator is paying over $23,000 every single year purely for the privilege of accepting digital money from their guests. However, if that same operator replaces the default flat-rate arrangement with an independent merchant processor utilizing a transparent interchange plus pricing structure, their effective processing rate frequently drops to around 1.8%. On that exact same $60,000 a month in sales, the annual processing fees drop from $23,000 down to $16,000. That is $7,000 of pure, unencumbered liquid cash clawed back into the owner's bank account every single year, achieved simply by refusing to accept the convenient default software setting. This brings us to a fundamental operational principle that separates commercial food service from nearly every other asset class: the perishability of time and capacity. In the restaurant business, an empty seat at a dining table during a dinner service is not a neutral zero. It is a permanent financial loss. Your commercial rent does not pause because a four-top table sits empty between 7 and 8 o'clock on a Tuesday evening. Your kitchen staff is still on the clock. Your HVAC system is still cooling the room. The fixed cost of maintaining that physical seat continues every second. Once that dinner service closes at 10 o'clock, the potential revenue that empty table could have generated during that lost hour is gone forever. It cannot be inventoried, carried forward, or resold tomorrow. This is precisely why table turnover is managed with mathematical obsession. Casual dining concepts target 2.5 to 3 complete table turnovers per service window. Fine dining, with its slower multi-course pacing, usually operates on 1 to 2 turns. Every single minute shaved off ticket times, every streamlined digital payment option, every reservation system optimization that smooths out arrival spikes exists for one primary purpose: to prevent the restaurant's most expensive capital asset, its physical dining chairs, from sitting idle and earning zero revenue. It was this exact panic over empty seats and unutilized kitchen capacity that opened the door to a modern financial Trojan horse: third-party delivery apps. When platforms like DoorDash, Uber Eats, and Grubhub first swept through the restaurant industry, their sales pitches sounded like financial magic. They promised operators incremental revenue, the ability to monetize unutilized kitchen capacity during slow afternoon hours, without adding front-of-house servers, buses, or physical dining tables. On paper, it looked like pure margin expansion. In reality, it triggered an operational death spiral. Third-party delivery platforms do not operate as friendly marketing partners. They operate as high-margin toll booths, sitting directly between the merchant and the consumer. The base commission fee charged to a restaurant for a single delivery order ranges from 15 to 30% of the gross order value. Now, layer on the additional costs. Add the mandatory payment processing fee of roughly 2.9% plus 30 cents. Add the optional but practically mandatory in-app marketing placement fees required just to rank visible on the local delivery app search page. When you combine these line items, the true cost of fulfilling a delivery app order routinely devours 30 to 40% of the transaction's gross value. Recall the core financial reality we established earlier: a healthy, highly efficient, full-service restaurant operates on a net profit margin of roughly 7 to 10%. If a guest orders a $40 meal inside your dining room, you might keep $3 to $4 in actual net profit after paying your prime costs and overhead. But if that exact same guest orders that exact same $40 meal through a third-party delivery app, the platform instantly takes $12 to $16 in commissions and fees. Your $3 net profit doesn't shrink. It instantly transforms into a devastating $4 to $8 net financial loss on the order. You are effectively paying a multi-billion-dollar technology corporation for the privilege of cooking food in your kitchen. This exact structural miscalculation was the engine that fueled and then spectacularly destroyed the multi-billion-dollar ghost kitchen boom. During the height of the venture capital frenzy, tech investors poured hundreds of millions of dollars into delivery-only facilities. The narrative was seductive. Strip away the expensive dining room, eliminate servers, buses, and front-of-house real estate, put 20 virtual restaurant brands inside a single low-cost industrial warehouse, and let delivery apps handle the distribution. Silicon Valley convinced itself that software economics could finally disrupt the ancient, physical friction of commercial food preparation. It was a catastrophic misunderstanding of baseline hospitality math. Removing the dining room saved 10% on occupancy, but handing 35% of every order over to delivery apps instantly broke the business model. You cannot solve a 35% commission problem with a 10% rent savings. The math isn't complex, it is structurally impossible. As a result, massive venture-backed ghost kitchen networks collapsed into liquidation. They attempted to run a business bound by physical, commercial real estate timelines and thin physical margins using 2-year venture capital return expectations. It was the WeWork story played out again, just wearing an apron. The independent operators who actually survived the delivery app era did not attempt to out-negotiate the tech platforms. They restructured their operational systems to protect their margins. First, they instituted aggressive, tiered delivery pricing. They raised their menu prices on delivery apps by 15 to 25% above their in-house dining room prices. They recognized a fundamental consumer truth. A customer sitting on their couch at 8 o'clock on a rainy Thursday night, prioritizing convenience, is not cross-referencing the price of a chicken sandwich against the physical menu printed inside the restaurant. The price inflation simply offsets the platform's predatory commission fees. Second, they brutally stripped down their delivery menus. They removed every delicate, labor-intensive, or high-cost item that degrades inside a cardboard container during a 20-minute scooter ride in the rain. They limited their delivery offerings strictly to high-margin, durable items, pizzas, cooked pastas, fried chicken, and braised meats dishes with low food costs that maintain thermal integrity and quality during transport. Third, and most importantly, they transformed every delivery package into an acquisition funnel. They slipped branded physical inserts into every delivery bag, offering a $10 discount coupon or a free appetizer on the guest's next order, provided they ordered directly through the restaurant's proprietary website or pickup system. They systematically converted leased platform users into own direct relationships, cutting the third-party platforms out of the transaction entirely. In the modern restaurant ecosystem, operational management extends far beyond the physical kitchen walls. Digital reputation is no longer a vague marketing vanity metric. It is a direct, quantifiable financial input on your balance sheet. A landmark empirical study conducted by researchers at Harvard Business School examined the direct financial impact of crowdsourced review platforms like Yelp and Google Reviews on independent restaurants. The findings were definitive. A single one-star increase in an independent restaurant's overall rating translates directly into a 5 to 9% increase in total top-line revenue. In reverse, a half-star decline triggers the exact same financial damage in negative territory. For a restaurant generating $15,000 a month, losing a star can silently wipe out $9,000 to $16,000 in top-line sales over the course of a year. The loss occurs silently, driven by platform algorithms that quietly deprioritize lower-rated establishments and route foot traffic to competitors. Now, picture what happens when an operator successfully masters digital reputation, stabilizes their prime cost at 62%, generates a healthy profit, and decides to execute the ultimate expansion move. Opening location number 2. This is precisely where operational complexity stops growing linearly and begins expanding exponentially. Replicating the exact culinary quality, service culture, prep consistency, and financial controls across a second physical location is vastly more difficult than building the first. The single most common cause of multi-unit failure is over-leveraging to finance expansion, combined with growing faster than your operational systems can handle. To solve this, scaling brands frequently deploy a commissary kitchen model, a central industrial production facility that prepares all stocks, sauces, dressings, and prepped protein portions for every regional location. This turns individual unit kitchens into streamlined assembly and finishing stations rather than full prep facilities. Done correctly, a commissary kitchen locks in massive bulk purchasing discounts, slashes local unit waste, and ensures absolute flavor consistency across every zip code. Done incorrectly, it introduces massive upfront capex debt, complex cold chain logistics, vulnerabilities, and strips local chefs of their ability to adapt to immediate supply market changes. Franchising solves the capital expansion problem by utilizing third-party investor money to build new units. But franchising only works if your operating system is documented so completely that a total stranger can execute your exact model without you ever standing in the building. The expansion trap at this stage is almost always psychological. A founder achieves resounding success at location number 1. They mistake that individual location's success for proof that their business model is ready for national scale. In reality, location number 1 often succeeded, largely because of the founder's physical presence, their endless 80-hour work weeks, their personal charisma with regular guests, and their constant visual oversight of the kitchen line. When location number 2 opens, the founder's time is split in half. They promote their top-line cook from location 1 to become the head chef at location 2, instantly weakening the kitchen that made them famous in the first place. Location 2 opens with higher rent, an unproven local team, and zero operational documentation. Within 12 months, the owner isn't running 2 profitable restaurants. They are managing 2 bleeding operations that are dragging each other into bankruptcy. If you want to understand how brutal this industry can be, look at the legend who literally wrote the modern playbook on American restaurant hospitality, Danny Meyer. Meyer built Union Square Hospitality Group into an empire, creating icon institutions like Union Square Cafe, Gramercy Tavern, and spinning off Shake Shack into a multi-billion-dollar public corporation. He pioneered the philosophy of enlightened hospitality, the belief that prioritizing staff, well-being, and community culture creates superior financial returns for investors. And yet, even inside Danny Meyer's world-class organization, entire celebrated restaurant concepts have been forced to close their doors permanently. Concepts didn't close because the hospitality failed or because the food received poor reviews. They closed because commercial lease terms expired, property taxes skyrocketed, local labor market dynamics shifted, or neighborhood foot traffic moved away. The lesson is undeniable. A restaurant's economics are permanent hostages to its specific zip code, its long-term commercial lease terms, and its local labor pool. You cannot relocate a commercial kitchen the way an e-commerce brand relocates a warehouse. You are locked to one physical street address, at one fixed rent schedule, in one local labor market, for the entire duration of a multi-year lease. If any of those underlying structural elements turn against you, culinary excellence alone cannot save the balance sheet. So, let's run the final financial breakdown. What does a restaurant owner actually take home at the end of the year? Across the United States, average owner compensation ranges from $45,000 to $100,000 annually. Highly experienced operators in high-volume premium markets can pull $150,000 to $300,000 in total compensation during exceptional years. Let's look at the financial models for a mature, well-run restaurant generating $1 million in gross annual revenue under 2 distinct scenarios. In the optimistic scenario, your prime cost holds firm at 62% through disciplined inventory management and low employee turnover. Your fixed operating expenses, rent, utilities, and card processing take another 27%. Your net operational profit before debt service and taxes lands at 11%, $110,000. After paying debt service on your original build-out loans, you retain roughly $70,000 in net profit. Combined with a reasonable $80,000 owner's salary drawn from operations, your total personal household compensation reaches a healthy $150,000. Now look at the realistic scenario. Your prime cost creeps up by just 6 percentage points, landing at 68% due to untracked kitchen waste, slight overtime scheduling, and standard employee turnover penalties. Your fixed rent and utilities remain completely unchanged. Your net margin instantly shrinks from 11% down to just 3%, leaving $30,000 in cash flow. Once your annual bank loan payments are deducted, your net profit drops below zero. Your entire annual personal income is reduced solely to whatever modest base salary you can draw before the business account hits empty. A tiny 6 percentage point slip in operational control is all it takes to transform a thriving business into a personal financial crisis. So, should you actually open a restaurant? If your motivation is purely a love of cooking, a passion for hosting dinner parties, or the romantic dream of owning a social neighborhood spot as a passive investment, the mathematical reality is stacked heavily against you. The operators who survive in this business do not view it as a romantic culinary hobby. They treat it like the daily execution of a razor-thin, capital-intensive manufacturing assembly line, one that just happens to serve food. They accept 80-hour work weeks, missed holidays, unforgiving margins, and massive personal financial liability. They understand that cooking for people you love at home and managing a repeatable, cost-controlled, health-inspected, high-volume commercial kitchen are two completely unrelated skills that only happen to look similar from the dining room side of the pass. The restaurants that survive and thrive are built by operators who master both sides of the pass, leaders who care deeply about the plate leaving the kitchen while watching their prime cost percentages with the intensity of an airline pilot monitoring an altimeter. If you are determined to enter this world, there is one piece of advice that outweighs every business book on the market. Go work in someone else's restaurant first. Master the operational rhythm, learn where money silently leaks, and make your inevitable initial mistakes on someone else's balance sheet before you risk your own life savings. It is not a romantic business. It is a brutal manufacturing business that only produces something romantic if you survive long enough to master the math.